On the topic of eggplant, though, it is my favorite on the planet. So I completely disagree. I think if I had to choose top 3 foods, I think eggplant is probably one of them. So I got a kick out of that combo.
To each their own.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, the more burnt, the better. So I'm going to share my screen with you right now. Let's hope that I can do this correctly. One moment. All right. Please let me know if you are seeing a truffle presentation. Good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, great. So I'm going to just jump in right here. I think I have about 20 minutes with you, and then we can open it up to Q&A. So like I said, Sabatino is a family-owned truffle company. We started in 1911 in a small town called Terni, right outside of Umbria, Italy. And we started with just a little plot of land and have grown to become one of the largest truffle companies in the world. So we're over almost, I think, 110 years old, and we have a 100,000 square foot facility in West Haven, Connecticut, which I don't think you would normally think of when you think truffles. But we have a facility in both the US and then, of course, in Italy, the hometown. So fresh truffles, I mean, this is just a really fun topic. And what I'd like to first look at is what exactly are they? They go by a very fancy term, ectomycorrhizal fungi. What that actually means is basically showcasing that it has a symbiotic relationship with the roots of trees. So these truffles are growing underground attached to roots of trees. And, you know, I think a lot of people don't know this, but there's actually over 200 truffle species out there in the world. So while in this presentation, I speak about our top revered species that Sabatino carries, there are so many out there, even in the US. We have a very large Oregon truffle thing going on. We have truffles that are found in Texas, truffles all over the US actually. The reason they don't get the notoriety that the ones I talked to you about is because of their flavor profiles mainly. And I think that there's a little element of romance that goes into truffles, and it's way more romantic to sell a truffle from across the world than the US. But that being said, we've seen an incredible boost and growth in the domestic truffle market, which has been pretty fascinating. So we are talking about truffles, right? And how do they actually grow? So briefly, I told you that truffles are ectomycorrhizal fungi, so they're growing on roots of trees. There's several different trees that fruit truffles. The popular, I'd say, are hazelnut, oak, and poplar. And this is a very fun topic because primarily when we think truffles and we think truffle hunting and truffle trees and that universe surrounding truffles, they grow wild, okay? So there are forests of trees out there in different parts of Europe that these truffles grow. And what's been interesting, though, is that over the course of a few decades, we've actually been able to create what's called truffle plantations. So basically mimicking what we see and creating, think similar to a wine vineyard. We create a truffle vineyard. So we plant rows and rows of truffle trees. And this is where we can relatively control the environment in which it grows, but there's so many different elements to that and what that looks like. So when we're able to create a plantation, there's a lot of elements to it that make it difficult. And I can go into this more into questions as well, but when we talk about planting truffle trees, it takes anywhere from 5 to 7 years for truffles to even fruit. And that's dependent on the irrigation system, the weather gods, the soil composition. There's a lot of elements that get involved when producing a truffle plantation. That being said, by having all these truffle plantations and also the actual wild sources, we've been able to really support the demand for truffles in the industry. The best part about truffles is because they grow underground, we can't see them with our naked eye. So we actually use dogs with their sense of smell. Now, truffle dogs are the best, and they are the ones that actually hunt for truffles. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about pigs being the original truffle hunter. And they actually were, the original truffle hunter because pigs are attracted to the pheromones that truffles release. And, you know, I say pigs, but really we're talking boars. We're talking very large animals that are trying to get the same truffles as a farmer, okay? And when you're up against a multiple 100-pound boar, you are not getting that truffle. So the farmers were really smart in that they decided to train dogs to hunt for truffles. So the preferred breed in Italy is the Lagotto. This is the dog that is not on the picture, but it basically looks like a very cute poodle, very similar to the poodle family. But a variety of different dogs can become truffle hunters. Broncos, pointers, even Labradors, beagles. A lot of dogs, if trained properly, can hunt really well. And that's something too that we can go into way more depth about in terms of hunting truffles, because there's an art with actually training these dogs, because they're essentially part of a family. So then we have types of black truffles. So sorry, do you still see my screen? I know I moved it a second. So we have types of black truffles. So we are entering in white truffle season, October through December. So I'm going to just jump in right there because it is the best. White truffle season gets the most marketing, I'd say. They are the ones that is very well known in the industry. So when we talk about different truffle species, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, that like I said, there's several different species out there. But we offer, I'd say the top, you know, you see 5 here, but I'm going to lump it into 4. We offer 4 types of categories for these truffle species that are the most revered. And you can get truffles all year long. I know typically it's right now that people say it's truffle season, and that's because people love and know white truffles. But there's actually a truffle for every season, and you can really enjoy truffles all year long, depending on the species. So when I talk about white truffles, which is right now, they are extra, extra special because they only grow for a period of time. Now, the other catch with white truffles is that I talked about truffle plantations, right? Truffles growing in a relatively controlled environment. The only one, the species that scientists are not able to figure out how to inoculate the spores of truffle DNA into the roots of trees to create these truffle plantations. The only one that doesn't work is the white truffle. So that's why white truffles are very famous, very well known, because of how rare they are. Now, it's actually interesting because in recent times, there's been a lot of articles about Napa Valley actually producing some white truffles. And that's very exciting because it's showing that scientists are learning how to produce them. That being said, if you see underneath every single title here, white truffle, they go by Latin denomination, so tuber, magnatum, pico. So that's something that's very key to understanding truffle species because there's similar truffles that look like the white truffle, similar truffles that look like a black summer truffle. There's a lot of similarities in truffle in terms of what they look like, but the difference really lies in the taste. So there are Bianchettis and other versions of white truffle, but the Magnum Pico is the white truffle. So when I talk about expensive, you know, white truffles can go anywhere from $2,000 or $1,000 to $6,000 a pound. Okay, keep that in the back of your head as I continue on with these truffles. But the white truffle is very special because unlike any of the other truffles, it probably has the most unique flavor profile, in my opinion. You're getting garlic, you're getting cheese, you're getting yeast, you're getting a lot of familiar aromas out of a mushroom. It's very, very special. So then going into something else that is in season right now, as you can see here, are burgundy truffles. So tuber uncinnatum. Now, burgundy truffles are from September through November. In recent time, scientists have actually discovered rather, that the black summer truffle that you see above, the tuber ostivum, is part of the same family as the burgundy truffle uncinnatum. So in the industry, in my truffle industry, we still sell them, identify them separately, because the difference is in the maturity level. So essentially it's the same truffle, but one is early and then the other is later. So if for identification purposes, in terms of selling to chefs and selling to private clients and all of that, we still keep the identity separate because there are different nuances. So burgundy truffles are darker in color in the flesh. As you can see, it's a little browner than the black summer truffles, a little more pale. The flavor for both of them is very light. These grow off hazelnut trees, so you're actually going to get some nutty hazelnut notes, which is very cool. But that being said, they're much lighter in flavor profile than the other species out there. So in terms of price, let's say right now it's anywhere from $100 to $250 a pound. So that's a very big difference compared to the white truffle. And then we have the black winter truffles. So you'll see two here, black winter tuber melanosporum, and the same species, tuber melanosporum, but we call it black winter Australian. So this is very cool because it ties in the conversation of truffle plantations, where we're able to actually create plantations in Australia that mimic the same forests that you find in France. Typically speaking, black winter truffles are known to hail from France. They can also be called Périgord truffles. But it's amazing because what ended up happening is we have these black winter truffles that are available from Europe, November through March. But then scientists were able to inoculate the same truffle DNA, produce the same exact truffle in Australia. The reason that's so exciting is that Australia has opposite seasons, right? So in their, winter months, when they're producing these winter truffles, we actually are getting them in our summer months, which means we're getting a truffle for way longer periods of time in two different seasons, but yet it's the same species. It's magnificent. The cool thing about black winters is, I'd say in terms of like favorite truffles, I'm a very big fan of black winters. They have a very earthy taste profile to them. You can also see the image of it. It's a beautiful black interior with a gorgeous white marbling. The aroma is almost chocolatey, olivey, a very deep taste and aroma. Very different than, the summers and very different than the white. So in terms of truffles, this is something that is a very interesting conversation, because why are truffles so popular? The number one, and I'll go into why it's in quotation marks, but one, they are expensive, right? They're hard to grow. They're hard to find. For the most part, we're shipping them from across the world, right? When they're from Europe or Australia. Truffles are a big ticket item. It takes a lot of energy and time, because when it gets to our Italian facility, we're sorting them. Then we're taking the ones that can actually survive transport and shipping it to our US facility. And then from our US facility, we're sending it to chefs or to private clients. So there is a lifespan, a very short lifespan with truffles. that, the fresh truffles last upwards to 10 days. That being said, white truffles, which have a very thin exterior, last, I'd say, up to 5, maybe 6 days, if properly taken care of. That means the minute we get them, they're ticking time bombs. We need to get them out of our hands as soon as possible. So this is why there's an expensive element to it, because there are a lot of truffles that don't survive. There's a lot of waste. As a company, we are able to handle that on the back end, which is really nice in terms of not producing a lot of waste, where we end up freezing truffles that aren't suitable for fresh sales and then producing truffle products out of it. But that being said, that's why there's a heavy cost because of all these steps we have to take with fresh truffles. The second one is that they're rare. I mean, we talk about apples or oranges or limes that growing on trees that you see, but truffles are underground, and we're using an archaic process to this day of having a dog find them. It's absolutely magical, and it's something that I think, being in the food industry, we forget, because everything's readily available at all times, right? When we want something, we can get it. But with truffles, we can get it. We can get it within 24 hours of ordering it. But yet it has this whole magical life behind it that we don't see from other vegetables or fruits. And then number 3, they're delicious. There is nothing in this world that tastes like a truffle. It's a very unique flavor profile. You have people who either love it or hate it. This is something that is a flavor that you're not experiencing in your day-to-day life, right? It's not something that, unless you're very lucky and wealthy, but it's something that you're probably not having for breakfast every morning, or, it's something that you have for a romantic evening out or a very special occasion. You don't have access to it like you do, your cucumbers or what have you in the fridge. So I want to touch, I heavily focus on fresh truffles because I think that's where, the education needs to stem from, because when we enter the world of truffle products, there's a lot of misinformation out there on the market because there's a lot of mimicked products. And this has created a very big talking point in the industry, where a lot of consumers are misled, don't understand what truffle products actually mean. So for our company, it's very important when you're working with fresh truffles or truffle products to work with a reputable company, to really know where they're sourcing from, how their manufacturing process works, all that. So we manufacture all of our truffle products. About 90%, I'd say, is manufactured in the US, and then 10% machines, it's still manufactured in Italy. But we have eyes from the ground to, from the baseline to selling it. So we don't do anything artificial. What ends up happening is we're actually using natural truffles, or natural flavors from fresh truffles. The easiest way to really understand the process, because a lot of it is proprietary information, is similar to like lemon oil, where if you have a nice lemon oil, companies will do a steam extraction process. It's the same thing with truffles. So it's a big vat of truffles. We're using a steam extraction process to capture that truffle aroma. This is very easy to tell with preserved products, because if you taste our truffle oil, it is very different than other truffle oils you will have on the market. It is much lighter in aroma and flavor profile. I think truffle oil is the biggest product that gets like the most backlash in the industry. So it's very exciting to educate about truffle oil because of the flavor difference. And, you'll actually see in time, after a few months, that the aroma is going to dissipate. That's because it's naturally infused. So we always recommend using it within 6 months. Because it's expensive to the end user in a sense, but to the back of house, it's affordable because of your profit margins that you can make off this product. French fries, we know potatoes don't cost anything, right? Very, very low cost. When you add truffle to that menu item, you are able to make a lot of money. I mean, in New York City, there were truffle fries on the menu for $18, and that was just using truffle oil. And people bought it because people want that magic, right? People want that story of the truffle. People like that flavor. It's very unique and it's worth money. This is something where restaurants can actually make a lot of money from it. So truffles are affordable. The other thing to keep in mind is that, when I pitch this to restaurants, chefs in the industry, they're affordable, and they also make you look good, right? A restaurant that's offering fresh truffles looks like $1 million, right? The fact that you have access to these truffles, that you can give it to your customers. The other idea too is that these customers are coming to your restaurant because your food's delicious, but offering truffles is that extra touch of special, right? It's that shaving magic onto a plate. It's that memory that they're going to have from leaving your restaurant. So it's, shaving table side, I always say, is a monkey see, monkey do type of mentality, because when one person gets it, it's like keeping up with the Joneses, the other table wants it. So it's a very special experience that not everyone has every day. This is just brief overlook on a range of our preserved truffle products. We do everything from butters to honeys to oils to salts and powders. We can make any dish truffleized. And that's about it. So I'm excited to hear questions.
What has been your favorite experience with the company so far?
Oh my gosh. Okay, truffle hunting, probably. That's a great question. It's such a special experience being able, when you were having that initial conversation where people are fine getting chicken because they don't see the process, right? Except when you talk about wild game, you're nervous almost. You don't really want to see that or hear that. I think the magic behind truffle hunting is you're really seeing the process that goes into it. And obviously we're not hurting any animals, so it's more palatable to people in terms of experiences and understanding where it comes from. So my favorite experience with the company is truffle hunting, because you see the story unfold. When we talk about truffle farmers and truffle hunters and truffle dogs, it's a family business. It's not something where someone wakes up one day really and is like, I want to be a truffle hunter. It's something that's passed down through generations in Europe. It's something that's really revered and special to the family. And these families have these dogs that have been with them for generations. So when you go out in the forest and you see the relationship with the hunter and the dog, it's very rewarding to know that this is the product that you're able to bring to people. So I realized my camera was off.
I have a question. How do you guys wash the truffles?
Great question. Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you. How do I wash the truffles, and was there another element to that?
I was just wondering how you wash them and prepare them.
Yep. Okay. So washing truffles is very, at the manufacturing level, it's very intense, because they do go through two different versions. You have fresh truffles, and then you have preserved truffles. So all truffles that come into the facility have soil on them. They're coming directly from the ground from our farmers that we work with. At the manufacturing level, prior to shipping it to you, they go through a form of a bath that requires water and scrubbing. Because then when you receive it, you're going to get a truffle that might have a teeny tiny bit of soil on it. But so when we tell the end user how to clean a truffle, we recommend like a toothbrush and a gentle stream of water, and you're literally just brushing off any remnants of little soil composites that you might see. We do the heavy lifting at the back end. That being said, with preserved products, they almost go through like a bath, like with our peelings and our sauces and things like that. They're boiled. They end up being boiled and then going through sterilization and then some pasteurization process. So they're heavily, heavily cleaned prior to that packaging.
I have a question. Are there any that are poisonous or bad for human consumption?
That's a great question. I don't have the direct answer. I'm assuming within the several hundreds of species of truffles, there are ones that are inedible. We as a company only focus on those top revered species. So ours are fully edible and delicious. I don't have a direct answer to that. I'm assuming there are some that are inedible and poisonous. Except I don't know if anyone, I just learned this today actually, about, the topic was foraging mushrooms, right, in totality. And I made a comment like, God, who was that person to try the truffle that was or not truffle, but try the mushroom that was poisonous. But I was told a story, and I did not fact check this, so just let that be known. But I was told a story that back in the day, what would end up happening is older shamans or older, wise men would be following cattle and following their pathways and actually looking at their dung, because that's obviously where a lot of mushrooms were produced. And so they assumed that if the cattle was able to process the spore and the spore were to grow in the dung, that was probably safe to eat. And so there would be an older person to taste it, take a very little bit and taste it. And if they survive, then yay, it's edible. So I thought that was fascinating, a cute story about it.
I had a question going off of the types of species of truffles, but I was just wondering, if there are so many species, why are so few of them sought after? Or I guess maybe another way to say it is, are more species than like the 5 we went over available for sale? Like, do people still eat them, and why, I guess?
Yeah, quite frankly, it comes down to marketing. I think, so I've tried several different species of Oregon mushrooms, and a lot of them, very different taste. I think what ended up happening is that there are certain taste profiles that people gravitate towards, and then the word spreads. That being said, there's several species that aren't spoken about that are absolutely eaten. Like, I know the Sabatino family, there's other varieties of truffles that they just don't sell, but they have access to on their property and they eat. But it's very mild in flavor profile. The other element to think about too is the production of truffles, making the demand. So there's absolutely species out there that have small yields. So it's something that's never going to be able to hit the market in the way that some of the other truffle species.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I will say is on the topic of truffle species, I'm sure some of you have heard of Chinese truffles. There was, I think it was in the 90s, I don't remember, but there was a time when Chinese truffles, and they're called tuber indicum, were sold off as our European truffles. I believe that they mimicked our summer truffles, or the tuber oscivum. So they looked very similar. Okay, so tuber indicum, which is Chinese truffles, look very similar to one of our species, and you'll find that across the board in terms of truffle species. There's a lot of similarities in look, but not in flavor. So what ended up happening is looked identical, had zero flavor. What they would do would be market it as tuber oscivum, a different species, and sell it. So this is something that was a very big problem and a very big deal for companies that didn't have structure in place, for non-reputable companies. So something like Sabatino, who's been around, didn't have this issue because we know exactly where we're sourcing from. But it was the companies that were smaller, or the, you know, guys knocking on back doors, that were trying to pass off these truffles. So that's why the identification of the species is very important, because there are species that look very similar, and you need to know exactly what you're getting and what to expect when tasting it.
I think we have time for just one more question if anyone else has one.
And then I'm seeing the chat. Did I lose you guys at some point in the presentation?
I know I lost connection, but it was just for like 30 seconds. I don't know if anybody else experienced the same thing,
Okay.
just at the very end.
Okay, good. Phew.
Jade, thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything you know and about your company.
Thank you. I'll just leave you with one thing. If you are very interested in truffles, I do have 2 books to recommend to you. One, this is like my Bible. It's called Taming the Truffle. And it gets very granular in terms of the growth elevation for truffles and things like that. So it gets very sciencey. However, there's a lot of amazing information in here about truffles and a variety of different species. So if you're interested in, you know, in mushrooms and want to learn more about truffles, I recommend that book. And then the other book that I lent my copy for and desperately need back, it's called The Truffle Underground. So this is a very juicy read. You are not getting this recommendation from me. It is a book that has gotten a lot of feedback in the industry, because what ends up happening is our company is brought up a lot in the book. And while we were represented with such positive look, our competitors were not so much fortunate. What this book did, though, it was an investigative journalist that looked into the truffle industry, into the process, you know, truffle hunting, the laws, and then the main players in the industry. And I thought it was you know, from being in the industry, it was a very fascinating read. However, I think anyone that's in the food industry would find it phenomenal if you are interested in mushrooms and in the specialty ingredient. There's a lot of very cool stories and information in there. So thank you. Appreciate your time. Let me know if there's any questions. You can email me at any time, anything that you didn't think of now, any more information you want. I will gladly talk about truffles all day. So I appreciate being here. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Much. Really appreciate it.